Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arseholics podcast. It's been a couple of weeks. We did our last episode just before the World Cup, a little special World Cup preview episode, and I've taken the opportunity to recharge, just enjoy the World Cup a little bit. I've got two of my good solid Arseholic brothers here with me, Mize and Nero, making his one appearance a year is here as well. We're all very lucky. Nero, how's it going?
Yeah, good mate, good mate. And I can finally focus back on Arsenal after the last month. So yeah, looking forward to this.
Good. I mean, we might, to be honest, let's just throw the agenda away to for a second. Tell us about your year. How's life been, and what have you been up to since people last heard from you?
I think I've actually been to more Arsenal away games this year than home games. So that's I don't know if that's a positive thing or a negative thing, but no, it's been good. Just enjoying the season. Shame the break came when it did, but obviously a bit of a distraction of the World Cup, and sort of looking forward to the second half of the season now. Just get back on it.
Yeah, man. And Mize, you probably, I'd probably say overall the biggest England fan out of the Arseholics unit, and obviously it was a disappointing. I think we're all England fans, but disappointing for England to go out the other day. I mean, aside from that, mate, have you been enjoying the World Cup?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I'm one of those people that I just try to consume as much football as I can when it's on TV, when it's on TV or whenever I can, basically. So when a World Cup comes around, especially the first 2 weeks when it's like 4 games a day or whatever it was, I was loving it. So yeah, no, it's been a good World Cup. Been a few like shocks and surprises. Few big teams going out early doors. Unfortunate with England, but I think, of being, in all honesty, I was kind of over it the next day after that. Like it's not the same feeling as a painful Arsenal defeat, which does stay with you until we play again. This one I was over quite quickly, and I think the fact that it was France, like it was frustrating what happened at the end and Kane missing the penalty, and kind of to think what could have been, but you can make peace with it because it was France, and look, they're in the final now, and good chance of winning it. So yeah, no, I've loved it, mate. I've loved it. Just like a festival of football, right? So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, with that England game, and Nero, you and I, we exchanged messages on the whole Arsenal over England sort of thing. I guess, in that vein, I think like we all are really, really eager for Arsenal players to do really well. And I think the thing that really bothered me in that England game afterwards was it felt like, to me, it was Saka's sort of coming of age England performance. It felt like on the biggest stage possible against the world champions, he was just so elite. I really wanted him to be on the winning side, because I think if England had gone on to win that game, people would have been really appreciating, what he did that game, not just England fans, but around the world. I think he probably would have elevated him that little bit more. Unfortunately, history tends to, not history, it's more that, when whoever wins the game tends to take the appreciation and the plaudits, etc. And Nero, I mean, how did you feel about in that context? Saka, he had a really good game that day, didn't he?
Yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of, if he had led England to glory, then he would have been a hero for most people. But I do feel like, if anything, despite the negativity of us getting knocked out, I think the one player that did sort of come through, apart from obviously Jude, sort of early in the tournament, I felt like Saka's performance sort of led to his sort of stock rising quite a lot. People even saying, why bring on Sterling for Saka, for example? And, we wouldn't have ever sort of hoped for that, a few years ago. So I think if anything, it's a good thing for Saka. From a Arsenal fan perspective, again, being on the cautious side, it's like, now everyone's going to be after him. Like I said, his stock's risen. He's going to be sought after now from most of Europe. Being a sort of a negative spin is more, I wish we had, sort this contract situation out before the World Cup. But
do you reckon his agent's gonna try and pump up the number a little bit?
Of course, that's what he's paid to do, right? So I think, from that perspective, yeah. But I think he's had a sort of great World Cup. He should get a lot of confidence from that. We'll see how he comes back. I think from all the World Cup players, how they will sort of come back into it after disappointing exit. We'll have to see if he's going to play on his mind for a bit before he sort of comes into it straight away, or if he can sort of if anything, I think what happened to him 2 years ago was probably, or it was worse, and he seemed to sort of bounce back from all that negativity then. So you'd hope that that would have sort of made him stronger in the mind as well, built a bit more resilience in him. So you'd sort of hope, if anything, overall it's a sort of good experience for him.
I think the most impressive thing, with Saka is you can see it now over the last couple of years, like Nero just touched on, right? What happened at the Euros last year? That must have been like, you can't really begin to imagine kind of the effect that would have had on him, the reaction from the entire country. And the boy just seems, I say the boy, that he as a man, as a player, as a person, just seems to sort of take all of it, not so much in his stride, but I feel like he's just got the right people around him, clearly very grounded, clearly, the right sort of, it feels like he's just got that mental strength to deal with all of these things. And, when you think about now, he's now played in a World Cup. He was an integral part of the team and the team's success. He scored goals, he created, he was probably the most, he probably was, I'd say, the most dangerous player against France. Obviously won the first penalty for us. And he's almost made himself undroppable for England on that right-hand side as well as Arsenal now. And at 21, that's pretty impressive. So I think that's like that's one of the most impressive things for me about Saka, not just how good he has become and how much he's, we all saw the qualities when he broke into the team, but he's improved and is delivering in terms of output, and is just a very, very exciting player to watch. But he's now doing it at the, on the biggest stage, the World Cup. So unfortunate for him. It would have been nice to have seen him, how would he have done in a semi-final? How would he have done potentially in a final, but at the same time, I guess we're probably all glad that he'll be back a week or two earlier than certain other players. So yeah.
It's quite interesting. Sorry.
Go on, okay.
No, I'll say it's quite interesting as well. After the semi-final, obviously he was getting all the plaudits, but after the sort of the group stage, there was still, a lot of talk about when Rashford was in form and if he would start ahead of Saka. So in a way, as Maya said, like even during the tournament, I didn't feel like the public felt that his spot was assured. We had a guaranteed starting spot because there were talks about having Foden and Rashford or even Sterling before he had to sort of go back home. So I hope that this has now sort of showed everyone that Saka is there to sort of stay. And let's not forget he was last season's England's Player of the Year, which I think a lot of people forget as well. So it's not a one-off thing. He's consistently performing at the sort of biggest stage.
It's a very good point that, him being England Player of the Year last season. And you're totally right. I think, after Rashford had that sort of little performance, there were question marks over Saka. It's interesting though, I think the performance against France, it almost solidifies his status across the sort of England winger population as the one where it feels like when you need someone to do a job, a reliable job, an intelligent job in terms of tactically, in terms of discipline, defensively, forward, sticking to a plan type thing, he's your guy, isn't he? He just seems to be so switched on, so focused. The occasion never gets to him. And I thought was so impressive against France was how he just stuck to very basic things, the things that he's really good at. And it's a shame because I think the referee was a total disgrace against him in particular. I'm not sure why that was. It's just, he was so disciplined in how he held himself, his technique, winning free kicks, etc. I think he would have done everything the manager would have wanted him to do. You think sometimes some players might have let the occasion get to them, tried a bit too much. I never felt that was the way with him. And Miles, I think you said, when you did that, you were at the TalkSport fans said like drink up or whatever it was.
It basically was that, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I saw what you said there on camera, and I think you said words to the effect of, if I recall correctly, you said words to the effect of, other people are seeing how we see Saka. We see Saka all the time, and other people are realizing it is. I think France was that, wasn't it? France was really, I felt that was a game where I think a lot of our, rival fans kind of looked at and go, do you know what? Actually, he is really good.
Yeah. And I guess because he's not, I was going to say not had the chance to shine on the champion. Like a lot of these players, a lot of these young players, they kind of shine, they do well in their, for their clubs, in their domestic leagues. But when it comes to actually putting themselves out there in regards to kind of world football, European football, it's doing it in the Champions League pretty much, possibly in the Europa League, but not so much, right? Not many people pay attention. People are not really watching the Europa League unless it's your team in it. So Champions League seems to be that platform. And obviously he's not had the chance to do that yet. So I do wonder kind of in the Premier League, I think, he's obviously earned respect from a lot of people. And, we love him as Arsenal fans, but I think rival fans also rate him. But I think if you look across Europe, like how we looked at, say, Jadon Sancho when he was at Dortmund, for example, and there's probably loads of players like, across Europe. How we look at those players and we think, oh, this guy's good, he's a hot prospect. This guy's going to be the next big thing, whatever. Like when Mbappe was coming through and smashing it for Monaco in the Champions League, Saka hasn't really had the chance. He just hasn't had the chance to do that. So I feel like this was almost, like you say, Raj, doing it at the World Cup and impressing so much and playing to such a high standard every time he was on the pitch. I think that this might be kind of a bit of a milestone moment for him in terms of his career, because I think other countries, fans of other clubs outside of the Premier League will sit up and take notice.
Yeah, I'm someone that the world hasn't been able to take notice of this World Cup. Is probably the only player of ours that is going to be involved in some shape, way, or form in the final, which is William Saliba. I mean, did England get beaten by who you think are going to be the champions, Nero? Is William Saliba going to come back with a World Cup winner's medal?
My money would be probably on I think Argentina, I would say.
As you and Mai said, Argentina were going to win, didn't you? They were your predictions.
They were.
I mean, you were drunk in New York at the time. I was like, give me your predictions quickly. Just message something.
Yeah, let's go
said, what begins with the first letter of the alphabet? Argentina.
I don't even know where I went with my other predictions, to be honest. I don't want to. Let's not go into that. I think Argentina. I would like them to win, to be honest. I think just the whole Messi fairy tale. They haven't won it for several years now, since was it 86. So it'll be good for them, and you can see like their fans, like they want it as well, don't they? So their fans have been sort of incredible all year, all tournaments. So like it would nice to see a different winner.
So you'd like to see them. What do you think will happen? Do you think they'll do
it? I think they can do it. Again, it depends on Messi. If he can sort of pull the strings again, I think their left back Hernandez looks a bit suspect. So if then Messi can get into him, I think France can be a bit vulnerable. I think Argentina can do it. I think they can do it. A bit of Leo magic, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, as you said, Raj, backed Argentina from the start, lost their first game, and I was thinking, bloody hell, what's going to happen here? But they've come back and they've been pretty impressive. They've just looked quite solid since that defeat, and I think it should be like it's the final that I wanted. Once we knew he was in the semi-finals, I wanted to see the two best teams kind of go at it and see who comes out on top, essentially. It'll be really interesting because I think France didn't play very well tonight. Obviously, they've just beaten Morocco, but they didn't like Morocco were they looked really good, and you kind of feel for them because they were the underdog. But I think France just had enough quality to kind of come through the game, basically enough experience, enough quality, especially their front three or front four. What will be interesting to see is kind of I think it'll be interesting to see how Argentina set up, because France seem like the team, like they've got the players that when they're on it, they seem to be able to pass through anyone, and they've got that quality through their team. And obviously they've, up top, they've got Giroud, who's in fantastic form. They've got, Mbappe, obviously, and dangerous players like Dembele and Griezmann, who just seems to be like creating and assisting a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if Argentina come into the game where they just set up very solid and see if they can almost, I don't want to say play on the counter as such, but but just take their chances as and when they come, but just try and be as solid as possible at the back and try to kind of hold France from playing their game. And I can see Argentina doing a typical South American job on France and, you know, being really aggressive and central midfield. They've got players like Rodrigo de Paul, who's, you know, just like kind of tough tackling midfielder, and Enzo Fernandez. So some kind of solid players in midfield. So I think it's quite an intriguing matchup. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top in terms of Mbappe and Messi, sorry. But as Nero said, like, I'm a big Messi fan. I love watching Messi. Always love watching Messi. And part of the reason I predicted Argentina to win was because I want him to win a World Cup before he retires. So definitely hoping that Argentina do it. And France already won it 4 years ago, so they don't need to win another one. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it might go extra time, and then hopefully Argentina kind of pull it out of the bag, and Messi has a good game.
I have to say, well done, mate, for getting their central midfield right this time.
That episode's off YouTube now. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I'm quite looking forward to is that there are two teams who feels like in the final third they're just both really good. Like when you look in the central of the pit in centre mid, I don't think either team really plays that much through central midfield. Although Tchouaméni's I think he was one of France's better players today. It feels like they're two teams who know that if they can get the ball into wide areas and get it forward quickly, that can like really, really hurt you. It's for different reasons. But yeah, I'm like, I don't really know where I stand on it. I quite like the idea, like you guys are saying, of Messi to bow out. I think that with a World Cup winners medal. I feel like this is probably Ronaldo's worst year of his life. From a football standpoint, like, can it get really any worse than this after the debacle at Man United, like getting kind of dropped for Portugal getting knocked out, and suddenly Messi's about to potentially win the World Cup? It looks like it'll be painful for him. But I would I think like Messi to win it. So we'll see. At the same time, quite like Saliba to come back with a winner's medal. I know he hasn't done anything, but still nice to be part of a World Cup winning squad, isn't it? Okay. What a year the boy could have, because his club team are doing pretty damn well at the moment. I guess we'll go into that in a second. I mean, before, I just want to touch on the other Arsenal boys who've been at the World Cup. We will save Gabriel Jesus till the end, because there's a lot we need to talk about with regards to that. But the other boys that have gone, they've had generally a decent kind of World Cup. I think all of them did pretty much all of them make it out the groups, I want to say. Did
Partey didn't? God didn't make it.
No, God didn't.
Tomiyasu did. USA did. Xhaka did.
Yeah, Turner did.
Yeah.
That was more or less it, wasn't it?
Brazil, yeah.
Ramsdale did.
Yeah. So, I mean, so we've done pretty well to avoid injuries, aside from the big one, which we'll talk about. But everyone else, I think they've had a nice little World Cup, haven't they? They've had a decent run out. They've got a little bit of a break. Any takeaways from you guys? Was Tomiyasu's kind of World Cup interesting to you guys? Because it's a bit weird with him. I felt like he kind of came into the Japan squad with his fitness, with a bit of a question mark over his fitness, and the Japan seemed to play him in a really interesting way. It felt like they were always kind of playing him for a very specific amount of minutes every game, sometimes coming off the bench. I think more or less he came off the bench for. Did he start? How many games did he start? I want to say he started less than he.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I think he only started, was it one or maybe two? Could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I don't know if you saw his comments, right? Like after the World Cup, he seemed to be really, really upset with his own personal performance in the last game. He made comments to sort of say, he felt that he had a terrible game, and he apologized to the Japan fans for himself. And it sounded like a very despondent guy who would need some picking up. Arteta seems like a good manager to do stuff like that. But Xhaka, on the other hand, sounded like he's still full of confidence. It's always interesting to see how the boys come back from their various World Cup journeys, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say, I mean, I think it's interesting with like Tomiyasu, Xhaka, if you think about the countries that they're playing for, they're not the biggest nations, or, they weren't playing for one of the favourites. Thomas Partey, another example. So it's quite interesting. Like, I think with Xhaka, like, was it the Euros that Switzerland did really well in when they beat France? Was it the Euros, last Euros they beat France? So I guess like maybe there's a little bit of expectation on them, but I think for those types of countries and therefore the players, it's pretty much look, get out of the group and then let's see how we do type of thing. And if we can get to a quarterfinal, then fantastic. And I think, in terms of how some of these players might respond when they come back to Arsenal, like I don't know, it's a weird one because we're just straight back into it, right? Like there isn't really any time to sort of dwell on what went wrong. I didn't play well in the World Cup. I didn't get my chance, or whatever it was. Like it's pretty much there's no break between July to the preseason starting or whatever. We're straight back into it. We've got a game in 10 days or whatever it is, or 11 days. So I don't really have any concerns. And I think if you're coming back having gone out of the World Cup, even like Thomas Partey, for example, we've gone out of group stages, disappointing, but then you're coming back to the team that's top of the league. It's not a bad place and situation. It's not a bad place to come back to, and not a bad situation to come back to. It's not like we're languishing in 7th or 8th, right? So, I think they'll be able to deal with it completely fine in terms of mentality wise, in terms of just hopefully the idea is we just pick up where we left off, and I think that's what if we're going to talk about Arsenal, I think that's got to be our target, right? That's got to be Arteta's target. I know that there's going to be kind of fitness issues and concerns, and certain players have played more than others and all the rest of it, and the Jesus injury, which we're going to talk about. But I think it's from an Arteta perspective, he's probably telling them, or he's going to be telling them, look, let's just pretend like we haven't just had a 6-week break and we just carry on from where we left off. And continuity is probably what he's going to try and kind of bring into the West Ham game, because that's what we were doing. We were doing so well, right? A few weeks ago, we were doing so well at the start of the season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Sorry. Yeah, I'm saying I completely agree. I think Arteta is probably the right guy after disappointment to sort of come back to, and put your arm around you and encourage you. And like Ben White obviously went home for whatever reasons, and I think we had 2 friendlies this week, and he was sort of started both games, played both games, so he didn't need a further prolonged break from that. So whatever happened to him, clearly Arteta's managed to hopefully sort that out, and he's sort of back in the game, back in the team. Obviously, part of disappointment, I think he started as well, one of our friendly games as well. So it's good that they're sort of slowly coming back into the team straight away. I think the only other player sort of you mentioned was like sort of Martinelli. I thought from Martinelli's sort of World Cup, it was obviously a surprise that he went there. Again, I would, to be fair, he's one of the players I had sort of full confidence in. If he does, play, he will be able to sort of show the world what he's capable of. And I think the one game he did sort of start and played the most game, I think they lost. Can't remember who they lost.
Cameroon game, was it?
Cameroon game, yeah. But again, all the plaudits in from Brazil were like he was their sort of standout player. So
yeah,
he didn't do his stock any harm either. So
I agree with you. Should we touch on the Ben White thing? Because you see, I think rightfully at the beginning when the news of Ben White leaving the England camp came out, it was sort of cited for personal reasons. I think rightfully everyone was, most Arsenal fans were sort of saying, no point speculating, no point talking about, rumours, etc. Apparently it's personal reasons, leave it at that, and it'll kind of, it'll come out if whatever. But it seems like more and more journalists, kind of Arsenal pundits, I was reading on Le Grove today, etc. It feels like there's a lot more confidence that actually some of the allegations were true around some kind of bust up in the England camp where seemingly him and Steve Holland had some kind of altercation. And if anything, it's sort of, if there is truth in that, it is sort of backed up by the fact that he's sort of come to Dubai and is immediately kind of, back playing football, back playing these friendlies, and seems to have a smile on his face. And I think he was on Instagram saying, back in business or whatever it was. Arteta's comments I thought were quite interesting. If you dissect what he actually said, he sort of said words to the effect of, I know Ben, I know what he needs. There was a line in it with sort of read like that, which again to me was like, oh, that's interesting. That seems like a there's some inference there to me. I took that to infer something around, well, maybe, some of the coaches dicked around with him, but I know how to get the best out of Ben. Miles, what do you think? I mean, I know we don't want to speculate, but if that is true, if he has had a bust up with Steve Holland or whatever, are you surprised? Are you surprised that he left the camp? And do you have any concerns about him and his mental state?
I was surprised. I mean, I think everyone was surprised when he left the camp. But when it happened, it sounded like, again, speculating to be honest, but it sounded like there was an personal issue that he had back at home in England, in London, to deal with, and that's why he came back. Obviously now, the news about this potential bust up has come out. I mean, look, I don't know whether to believe it or not. What I would say, when you hear Ben White talk, it's quite. I mean, look, his like kind of, he's got a very dry sense of humor, right? And he's got a very no nonsense approach with his interviews. We saw one just before the World Cup kicked off for Arsenal, where I can't remember which game it was. It might have been I can't remember which game it was, to be honest. But there was a game that we just played, and he got interviewed, and he was pretty much just like one word answers to the interviewer, and he was just sort of like, yeah, like, I don't really give a shit kind of thing. I'm not really fussed about being here, and I think that's just his personality. And I suppose there's a good chance that he goes away to England, and there's certain maybe coaches that just don't like that. They just don't like that kind of attitude. I don't mean attitude in a negative way, just his attitude, as in the way he is, his personality. So maybe it's happened. I mean, I find it quite interesting that if it's a bust up between a player or players and coaches, normally that kind of thing, when it comes to like England in tournaments and stuff, normally that kind, or any country at tournaments, it just that gets leaked, and the news spreads really quickly, and it becomes a massive thing. So England have done, if it is true, England have actually done quite well to sort of keep it under wraps to a certain degree. Look, in terms of his mental state, or how this might have affected him, not really. I feel like he's a pretty strong character. Like, I think even when you think back to when he signed for Arsenal, everyone wrote him off. Like, it was kind of like when we signed Ramsdale, right? Everyone wrote these players off, especially because of the price tag. And that didn't faze him when it came to his performances for Arsenal. That didn't faze him. Exactly that. That didn't have any effect on him. And he kind of blocked all of that out, blocked out a lot of the noise, blocked out a lot of the haters, whatever you want to call it. He made the centre-back position his own. He then kind of was forced, or I don't know, tactical switch into right back this season. Absolutely smashing it at right back. Again, we're top of the league, and he's been one of the standout performers for us. Done really, really well, linking up with Saka down that right-hand side. He's displaced our first choice right back. So I kind of look at him as someone that probably wouldn't be affected by this. I think it'll be a bit of a shame if it affects his England future in the kind of short to medium term. Like, if he doesn't get picked for the next few squads as a result of this, I think that would be a bit of a shame. And I can imagine that might affect him. But I also feel like, again, he's come back to a pretty good situation when it comes to Arsenal, right? Like, he's come back to a situation where we're absolutely smashing it, and hopefully we carry that on when we start again on Boxing Day, and that must help a lot. That must help a lot to come back to a team and a side that's winning games. So, yeah. I don't really have too many concerns. I just think it's a bit of a shame, really, that he ended up having to leave, because it would have been, like all the other players, like Ramsdale, it would have been obviously very good, even if he didn't get any minutes, which I don't think he was going to. It would have just been really good experience to be part of a team getting to the quarterfinals and playing a strong France team.
Totally agree. Listen, as we hit the half-hour mark, I think we should evolve into kind of the biggest topic of that we plan to talk about this episode, which is our player that did get injured this World Cup. Gabriel Jesus, what more needs to be said about his contribution to Arsenal this season that we haven't already said a million times? Despite the fact that he's not racking up massive goal numbers, I don't think that there's anyone who's been watching Arsenal who doesn't agree that he has in some ways helped transform this side. He's added a dynamic that wasn't necessarily there before. There's a certain type of experience and certain type of quality that he's brought and it's just really invigorated the side. We've talked on our previous episodes about the areas of the pitch where we would suffer the most if we had an injury. We talked about central midfield, and we talked about getting an injury to Gabriel Jesus. Nero, Mize and I have therefore probably contributed quite a lot to that conversation in the past. Tell us, what's your views? Gabriel Jesus picked up what seemed to be a relatively innocuous kind of knock. It didn't become apparent in the game, and then the news leaked that he was going to be out for about 3 to 4 weeks, and we were all like, oh, does that mean he's going to miss the West Ham game? Oh my God. And then all of a sudden it was like surgery, and potentially 3 to 4 months out. Maybe I mean, that's 3 to 4 months out is a much bigger deal than missing the fucking West Ham game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you think?
So for me, like I said, it was sort of a roller coaster of sort of emotions. Rather than telling you straight away, we were sort of finding out drip fed how bad the sort of injury was going to be. Again, for me, 3 to 4 months. I think the way Arsenal need to, and sort of Edu and Arteta needs to look at it is 3 to 4 months is April. There's a good chance that could easily prolong on to May. He won't be back to full fitness. Realistically, he might be out for the season. That's the way we need to sort of look at it. In terms of their options, obviously January is never the best time to be sort of buying players. Me personally, we've got Eddie there. I think it's time now. We gave him a 5-year contract extension in the summer, like 70 odd grand a week. So I think we have to back him.
I think it's 100 grand a week he got.
It's 100 grand a week.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So if you're going to be giving players 100 grand a week, a 5-year contract, it is for moments like this when your main striker is injured, and it's now your moment to go and shine. And I think Eddie's a kind of confidence player where in the past we've seen, coming in, as a sub or coming in one game here and there, he's never really performed. And you can sort of see that as well from the All or Nothing documentary as well. Like for him, he needs to be backed and go, I trust you for 5 games or I trust you for 6 games. So there's no sort of pressure on him. So me personally, I feel, I do like Eddie, and I do think for me, this is personally, I'll say go for it and back him as your main striker for the sort of next sort of, till the end of the season. Other alternatives, obviously, you've got, first thing is if he gets injured, then we're pretty screwed because then we've got no one there. Alternatively, there's talks about potentially shifting Martinelli up front. Me personally, it's again, you've got the system that's working now, and he's doing so well where he is playing. Like, why would you change that? Sorry, myself, I think you say something there.
No, I just wanted to pick up on something you said.
Yeah,
I think it's a really, really important point, which I think people are sort of overlooking slightly at the moment. A lot of people are debating as to whether we can rely on Eddie, and whether, given the targets moved somewhat, we're top of the league, and there's been that argument around, maybe we can have this unlikely title push, and it because of that, maybe the expectations have risen of what we expect out of a centre forward. And so there's this debate that's going on as to whether, Eddie can fill the shoes of Jesus and what he's been contributing. And whether we need to sign someone else as a result. But you make a good point, which is that I think, even if you do think that let's back Eddie and he's going to be the one, he'll be the main striker. If he gets injured, then you're screwed, because we're already operating with a squad which just had 2 recognised strikers and a Martinelli who could play there if we had to. But, it was a 2-striker. So that was relatively light anyway before. So your point is fair in that, if you've got a guy who's out for a number of months, it's not weeks, it's months, isn't it? And Eddie gets injured at some point, you're kind of screwed. So do you think, regardless of the fact that, you clearly think that Eddie is someone that, you think that we should back Eddie, do you think that we need to go for someone who can play centre forward in January?
I think we need to be, and I know obviously Eddie and Arteta are very obviously savvy in the market. Like, we need to, January signings are quite rare, especially with Arsenal. We're more, under this new regime, we normally offload rather than bring players in. So, obviously, they're thinking, January is normally inflated market as it is, right? Because no one wants to lose a player for half a season because then they'll have to go and replace that player. And B, as well, now everyone knows that Arsenal are desperate now. You know, we've lost Jesus. So automatically they're like throwing another 10 million or 15, whatever, 10%, 15% on top of the asking price. So I don't think it's going to be easy to bring someone in. And personally, like, you know, sort of going off it, if we had a sort of fixed budget for the January, I'll rather focus on, because again, like I said, the two areas that we were struggling is up front and in midfield. I'll rather, you know, try and get, you know, like a Tielemans on a cheap if I can, because I feel like the gap between then, you know, Xhaka and Partey, if one of them gets injured, then the drop is even further to like El Neni and Lukonga. So I feel that midfield is probably super key as well to, you know, our title challenge. So yeah, it all depends on, you know, who's available in the market. And there's talks about, you know, Sane as well. I don't know if that's how legitimate that was. You know, we're being linked to him, for example. And it's all, I guess they know what their budget is. Hopefully, it would have grown since start of the season. What their January budget was, as you said, considering where we are in the league and what we are fighting for. But then it's, you know, do we bring in quality now, or do we just bring in a stopgap now? You know, bring in another class striker. Then when Jesus is back, then, you know, who's your number one? You've got 3 strikers there fighting for that position. So I think we need to be smart about it, I think. And see what options there are.
There's a lot that you've said there that I think can be unpacked in different ways. But I think it's a fair point, that a general point there, that I think a lot of these things are inextricably linked. Like, for example, if we have a fixed budget, then we need to think about that, and because we do have to strengthen some other areas, etc. But before we get into all of that nuance, Mize, do you want to just pick up on some of the stuff that Nero said there? Like, so, you know, ultimately, you know, we think that in a worst case scenario, Jesus could be out for 3 to 4 months. This being said, apparently Granit Xhaka recovered from the same injury in 8 to 9 weeks. So, you know, it might be something that's less than that. And then if you look at it from a best case scenario in that way, let's just say if it was closer to 2 months, well, he had surgery, I don't know, what was it, a week ago? So there's a chance, therefore, he's back in mid-February. And that's a very different equation from being back in April, kind of, because as Nero says, you're back in April, then, you know, you might as well just assume the guy's out for the season, because you could be out of all your competitions by April anyway. So what do you think? I mean, building on the things that Nero said, what are your feelings around the matter?
Okay, so I mean, look, in terms of the injury, I think if we were ever going to get an injury because we, like you said, Raj, when you kind of introduced this segment, we pretty much said there's a few players you just don't want to get injured, but the 2 key ones were probably Jesus and Thomas Partey, right? So unfortunately, he's picked up this long-term injury, but you couldn't have really asked for it to come at a better time if it was going to come anywhere through the season. If it had come in, say, September, we probably aren't sitting top of the league come Christmas. So the fact that it's happened during this 6-week break or so, it means that his rehab, like you say, his operation was a week ago or whatever, his rehab can kick off before we even, you know, have to worry about the next Premier League game. So maybe we save 2-3 weeks there, whatever. Maybe, you know, that might make a difference. It might not. In terms of kind of what we do without him, like, it's quite interesting, right? Because Jesus wasn't scoring goals the last 10 games or whatever. I don't know. I can't remember now. All of my Arsenal stats have left my brain since they've not played in the last few weeks. But how many games it was that he didn't score and everyone was going on about it. You know, it's so in terms of what Eddie, if we take the assumption, I mean, I think it's a straight swap for Eddie in terms of what Arteta's going to do. I think he keeps the same system. I think, like I was saying before, right, in terms of continuity, just because, like, I completely agree with Nero. Eddie's there as a second striker for that very reason, right? Jesus is injured. Eddie's no longer that kid that comes on for 5 or 10 minutes. That is what he's doing at the moment. But his place in the squad is to be the Europa League guy, be the cup guy, play 20, 25 games a season, be there when Jesus needs a rest or he's injured, and to contribute, right? So I don't think it makes any sense to kind of look at bringing Martinelli through, playing him through the middle when he's just been so dangerous, so direct, so exciting, so effective down that left-hand side. I wouldn't want to change that now. And I think if you start doing that, then you're just changing too much in a front line that really, when you've got this kind of Jesus light in Nketiah, I'd rather just make that straight swap, as it were. And I think the point around like goals is quite important, because Jesus wasn't scoring goals, but it wasn't like there was any. Okay, maybe there was a little bit of discussion around, should we maybe change him for this one game? Should we play Eddie for this one game? Just take Jesus out of the firing line a little bit. But at the same time, he offers so much in terms of pressing, in terms of winning the ball back high up the pitch, in terms of aggressiveness, in terms of, you know, holding up the long balls and holding off the centre back, in terms of interceptions, all of those like attributes that he has, and all of those qualities that he brings to that centre forward role, that makes up a hell of a lot for not scoring goals. So if Eddie can do a lot of that, I'm not saying he necessarily can, and that's what we're going to see right over the next few games. But if Eddie can at least try to almost fill a lot of those holes or gaps that Jesus is going to leave, yeah, of course, he's probably going to be judged by goals. But at the same time, if Arsenal are still winning games and he's not scoring goals, it almost doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? So I'm kind of looking at this as, I completely agree with what Nero said. Like he's the striker that comes in now. He's got to take the opportunity. And I think for Eddie, he is a goal scorer, right? So he will look at this as, he's probably going to judge himself. Like his success criteria is, I need to be scoring goals. And to be fair, when he came in at the back end of last season, that's what he did. He did score goals for us, and very important goals as well. But I think he offers a lot of similar attributes in terms of pressing, in terms of chasing down the goalkeeper when the ball goes back, when the defense pass it back, or harassing defenders, making a nuisance of yourself, and just being really busy and being everywhere. I think he can do all of those things and do those things really well. And I think, you know, we're a team that are obviously creating chances at the moment, and I expect him to be on the end of those. So I feel like, you know, if he kind of plays to his full potential, we'll obviously miss Jesus, but I don't think we'll miss him as much as people are stressing out about. Maybe in some of the tougher games where it's like Spurs away, for example, and we maybe don't have as much of the ball as we would against, say, West Ham on Boxing Day. Maybe in some of those games, and Jesus gives you that option when you do go long. He's fantastic at, you know, despite his size, he's fantastic at holding off the defender, controlling a ball first time, bringing it down, and then, you know, releasing it or whatever. I'm not sure Eddie necessarily gives you that. I don't think he gives you that physicality as such. So we're probably, again, there's going to be a drop off, but I'm just kind of hopeful that, you know, based on everything I've said, we can manage without Jesus, and hopefully it isn't 4 months, and we can kind of get ourselves through maybe a 6-week, 2-month period and see where we are.
Do you think though, like, you made the comment around how it's like almost a like for like replacement. It's quite funny though. I almost feel that is true. That is very true. But I almost feel that is that a bit dangerous, because let's do an example, right? Let's say if you have Aguero and Giroud in your team, you've got those two strikers in your squad. You know when one of them starts over the other, you basically have to change your system, right? Like you can't play the same system. Like it's a completely different type of centre forward. And Eddie is, like you say, like Jesus, they're both pressing forwards. If Jesus is arguably the best pressing forward in the league, you'd still probably put Eddie in the top 5 in terms of pressing forwards. He's an incredibly effective pressing forward. So in terms of that element of the game, they're very similar. Eddie is going to want to be in the box, though. And here's the thing. The one difference that they both have, I would say, is that Eddie doesn't like to come as deep as Jesus does. And that's in some ways a small thing, but in some ways it's quite a big thing in terms of, like you've very correctly pointed out, it's not Jesus not scoring goals hasn't been a great issue because goals have been coming in the squad and other people have been scoring. But how much of that has been down to this role that Jesus has been taking where he comes a bit deeper and he does all these things? It's a bit hard to quantify. So my concern a little bit is actually, will that small detail mean that the amount of goals that we were generating from the rest of the squad is impacted because, you know, if Eddie isn't doing that exact role that Jesus does?
I guess we'll have to slightly sort of tweak the sort of system. Like I said, like Jesus would come back and get everyone else involved, but Jesus was never the most sort of clinical striker there was anyway. So maybe that role suited him better to get Saka and Martinelli and the rest of the midfield involved. Whereas I think Eddie's actually clinical.
And that's the paradox, isn't it? And that's kind of what Myers was alluding to, because goals had sort of dried up for Jesus. And actually, what is Eddie? Eddie is a finisher. Eddie is a goal scorer. That's what he wants to do. So the paradox is that actually, in theory, he should be able to do that quite well. And it's just you hope that the bit that Jesus was doing really well doesn't impact the efficiency of the rest of the team, which I think is going to be really, really interesting. But I do want to ask you on Nero's, because I think it is an important one. Regardless, do you think that there is a concern just with depth then anyway? And therefore, if whatever Arteta and Eddie were planning to do in January, do you think that they will be thinking about that issue, that what happens if Eddie gets injured, even if Eddie's injured for 2 weeks?
It's such a tough one, isn't it? Because, I mean, how many clubs, unless you're even City, to be honest, I was going to say unless you're City, but how many teams have, two, I don't know whether you call them top level strikers, but let's just say two top level or two very good strikers. More than two, right? So I mean, it's a difficult one because I think Nero kind of touched on it. You can't if there's a loan deal out there that could be done that makes sense across for all parties, and it's a short-term thing, obviously a 6-month loan deal, then maybe that's the solution. But maybe that might be something really difficult to do. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I think we knew that this. I wouldn't necessarily say the squad is thin, but I would say because we have a fairly decent second string. But I think injuries to certain players in certain positions, the next option is is just nowhere near the same level. Like Thomas Partey, for example, right? So can you address that in January? Maybe. I don't know. I think that what's going to be really interesting about January is how do, exactly what you said, how do Edu and Arteta and the rest of them basically, how do they approach January with the position that we're in? Because they can either look at it as we're top of the league, but we've actually got a chance of winning the league. Do we go for it? Do we go and get, I can't say his name. Is it Murdoch? Murdoch.
Apparently you're supposed to pronounce it Mudrik.
Okay, I'm not going to say. Yeah,
so
okay.
apparently it's I've been pronouncing it Mudrik. But apparently it's like Mood.
A Ukrainian guy. And the figures being quoted for him are north of, it's Pepe money kind of thing, right? More than that. So if we were to go and show that kind of ambition in January, that to me says the club think that we can win the league this season. Let's go and get the targets that we're probably looking at for the summer. Let's go and get them now. Kind of what we wanted them to do 12 months ago. And if they don't, if they are happy with what we've got or we don't strengthen at all, then I think it's okay. The target was Champions League. We're confident that this squad can deliver us Champions League, and we'll address it in terms of let's get Champions League, and then we'll address the kind of deficiencies and whatever in the summer. So that's what I think is just going to be really, really interesting. But yeah, I mean, look, we'd have to be so unlucky if this is what I'm saying. How many teams have a third striker they could just bring in? So we'd have to be really unlucky. I mean, Liverpool have been pretty unlucky this season, but their front three feels quite interchangeable. Ours is somewhat interchangeable, maybe less so. But it's if Haaland gets injured, then Alvarez comes in. If Alvarez gets injured, then okay, City probably have to play some sort of false line system or whatever, but they still have to make do with what they've got. And we'd probably have to do the same. So yeah.
And Nero,
I think. Sorry, I was going to say there's 2 points that Miles mentioned. So yeah, I completely agree with the. For example, we can't have 3 strikers. When Jesus is back, how do we make them all happy? How do you fit them all in? And if Balogun, come to Balogun in a minute. If Eddie does get injured, then for a couple of weeks, then we've all, like I said, we've got that short-term fix where Martinelli could potentially sort of play up front, right?
Or Smith Rowe as well.
Smith Rowe, especially, he's going to come back from injury. And then the second option is about Balogun. Potentially, there's an option there of bringing him back. But again, I feel that's a bit too premature at this point. And Mike, you're mentioning about signing, is it Mudrik guy for 60, 70 million? For me, that's as I said, Pepe territory. I don't think many people heard of this guy before. I didn't before this season. So I I think signing him for me wouldn't really indicate, you know, we're title ambitious team, because I don't know much about him, to be fair. So I don't know if, you know, bringing him in as a panic buy for 80 million.
I don't think it'd be a panic buy, to be fair, because I think we've been linked with him for a little while, and it's obviously someone that we're scouting. And I think it's a case of what Shakhtar want is like massive money, like they want close to 100 million, and I think the valuation is realistically a bit lower. I mean, like, I'm only going on what I've read, right?
40 apparently the summer that we were linked to, for 40 apparently.
Okay.
Well, so, but apparently, I think it's even more interesting than that, right? Because in the summer, it didn't seem like we were actually keen on him, because a fee was agreed with Brentford for 25 million.
Oh, no way. Okay, I didn't know that.
And he didn't want to go to Brentford. So it was Brentford and Everton, I think, who were the teams in for him. Brentford had a fee agreed for 25 million, and then the deal didn't happen. He didn't want to go. Now, I think the interesting thing about that is clearly we were up for getting a winger in the summer because of the Rafinha bid. Yeah. So clearly, I think they thought if a player was of the right quality, we'll get them in. And clearly they didn't think that Mudryk at whatever price it was worth it. But, and I think kind of, you know, big but, they quite clearly are keen now. And that's what all the reporters are saying, that they're quite keen now. So they've seen something over the last kind of few months, whether it's his performances in the Champions League or whatever, that's made them think, okay, we can get him. I'd be very surprised, though, if there is any notion with Arteta or Arteta or Edu. I'd be very surprised if either of them think, well, we weren't willing to pay 25 million for him in the summer. We are willing to pay 70, 80 million for him now. I'd be very surprised with that. I get the impression that Shakhtar's kind of CEO, whoever it is just trying to drive this price up as high as he can possibly get. From what I understand, the club are in a fair amount of financial difficulty, partly because of the Ukraine-Russia crisis. And ultimately, he's their big asset. So they're going to want to try and get as much money as possible from him. But I'd be very surprised if it is for that much money. I think again, the criticism I would have slightly, and it's hard to criticize, you know, Arsenal at the moment in terms of signings, is that if he was available in the summer and if he was available for around that much money, then why is it, what is it exactly that they weren't convinced about that, you know, they didn't bite the bullet on? But you know, it will be interesting. And like Nero, you said that because people know that we are, you know, because of the Jesus injury, that helps them in their kind of bargaining position as sellers. I guess the annoying thing is, right, in January, sellers all have the bargaining position, don't they? Like, because you know, you're always buying someone in January is generally because something's happened. Like, generally speaking, it's because of that. But you kind of hope that we are.
There's no guarantee either. Like when you're signing someone not from the Premiership, has never played in the Premiership, that they're going to come in and sort of that straight away. And if we need a 6-month fix, then that's very sort of risky. Whereas, you know, get someone from the Premiership, or, you know, someone like Sane, that name's been thrown around, who has worked with Arteta, that even, you know, that does feel more of a reasonable signing, because he'll sort of fit in straight away and Arteta would know what to do with him immediately. So yeah, I'm not really keen on this signing if it is 70 million.
Well, let's just say whatever the price is, let's just say, you know, we end up signing him, because what I feel quite confident, I don't know about you guys, I feel quite confident that they are very conscious of their budget, and I don't think they would sign someone for however much money if they thought it would stop them being able to do the other things that they also think are important. But, you know, I think what would be good is if we do sign a player like him, then even though you're not signing a centre forward, it does mean that if Eddie was to get injured, you have a little bit more flexibility, doesn't it? When, you know, by moving Martinelli out and, you know, back into centre forward or something. But we haven't really been linked with any other wide players this window. So, you know, for me, I don't know if you guys have heard anything, but it sounds like it's, you know, Mudryk is the one that we want, and like unless this is going to be one of those windows where someone just comes out of nowhere. Is there anyone you guys would like, though? I mean, Miles, maybe I'll come to you first. Is there a wide player that you might like? I'm just going to throw out an option for you. Go
on.
Zaha. We've talked about him before. He's coming out of contract. He's coming out of contract in the summer. He can play centrally. and he can obviously play wide. That's where he mainly plays.
Yeah.
Premier League proven. Has always seemingly wanted to come to Arsenal. Cut price deal clearly on the cards. As an example, would you take that as an alternative?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was one of the players that transfer deadline day in the summer. We were like, that might be one that Arsenal kind of pulled the trigger on, in the last few hours on the last day or whatever, and that just didn't happen. And whether we were ever interested or not, I don't know. But I'd absolutely love Zaha. I really, really like him. He's a player that is just another exciting, in terms of what you want from your attacking players. He's direct. He's exciting to watch. He likes to take players on. Obviously, that's his kind of trademark thing, right? Taking players on. But he also offers final product. And like Nero just said it, you can bring in players from anywhere around the world. There's no guarantees that it's going to kind of work out for them in terms of their Premier League careers. But with Zaha, we obviously know what he's about, and he can handle kind of the physicalities of the Premier League, and he's comfortable with it, and he's a London boy, all the rest of it. So there's a lot of reasons why it could work out. And yeah, look, if there was a deal to be done, I would love for Arsenal to get that and get him into our squad and almost, I dare say, provide backup to Martinelli on that left-hand side. I'm not necessarily sure that's the case, because I think, I would just love to see kind of how he could potentially do in our team. And I'm sure, like, I can't really see any reason why he wouldn't want to. Like, it feels like there's a big move left, like, for him. That Man United deal, or that move, just never worked out. And he's been at Palace forever. He's been at Palace like his entire career, apart from a year or two at Man United. And it feels like there's like a big club move just left. I think he's like 30 years old, around that kind of age. So yeah, I'm sure he would jump at the chance as well. So I think we've got to start looking at this as, okay, what do we want to achieve this season? Does Zaha help us achieve that? And I think if it's top four, let's be realistic. If it's top four, then I think Zaha in the squad does help that. And I think when you then look at, okay, let's sort of start planning for next season as well. Does Zaha get into our Champions League squad? I think the answer to that is yes as well. And does he play in the Champions League? Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes as well. So yeah, he's absolutely the kind of player that I would love for Arsenal to sign. As soon as you said, Raj, who would you like as a attacking player, as a wide player? I mean, no particular names came to mind. The one that did come to mind was Harvey Barnes, just because I quite like Harvey Barnes, but I'm not saying I'm desperate for Arsenal to sign him. And I'm not even necessarily sure he's like the answer, or he's going to kind of go on to fulfill a lot of the potential that he's shown. But he's a player that I really like. James Maddison's a player that I really like. Tielemans is a player that I really like.
You want the Leicester
yeah,
squad.
I want the Leicester squad, yeah. Vardy from 5 years ago. So, yeah, I can't really think of... I'm just struggling to think, to be honest, right now on the spot, but I can't really think of anyone else.
What about you, Nero? Anyone? Yeah. Anyone you could think of?
Someone I mentioned before. Like, if it is true, like, I'll definitely take Sane.
Right. Okay.
Because, like, he's worked with Arteta before. He's got Premiership experience. He's, how old is he now? I think he's about 26, 25, 26.
Literally,
so he's still...
I was just looking that up.
I think he's 26-ish. So he's obviously still got best years ahead of him.
Yeah, he's 26.
Like,
no.
26, yeah?
He'll be 27 in January.
Oh, okay. So when we sign him, he'll be 27.
Yeah. When we sign him.
And then, like,
prime years.
Yeah, only thing compared to, obviously, Zaha is like, Sane's played Champions League football. He's played high-level football for Germany. So he's got that big player or big game mentality. The same as bringing over, Zinchenko and Jesus. I feel, they've all worked with Arteta. He knows what they're about. They're sort of the risk, transitional risk is very minimal. And he could bring a bit of positivity as well to the squad. So he's quite versatile as well, where he can play. So that's why I would, as in, if there is a chance, I would definitely grab that.
Do you guys think we will sign anyone in January? Like, anyone?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
What position?
I think we'll sign. I think we'll go. Personally, I think we'll sign Mudryk. I think that it just smells like something that we're looking to do. Clearly, we wanted a wide player. I think for whatever reason, they're now convinced about him. Maybe they weren't in the summer. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have the. Maybe in the summer, for whatever reason, in the end, it was a fun. I don't know. There's so many things we don't know. But clearly, I think that they wanted a wide player, and it sounds like he's the one. So I think we will do that. I think there was always a plan to do something in January. Like it just felt like it was a case of, depending on how well we were doing, it could influence what sort of signing that was. I think ultimately they know that they wanted to strengthen the squad, but want to strengthen it with a certain caliber of player. And I think it was hard to entice some of those caliber of players if you don't necessarily have Champions League football that you can offer. But I think right now, when you're sitting at the top of the Premier League, it's really enticing. I think it's a different equation when you're trying to attract players. So I do think that if there's kind of any of these opportunities that can be done, that they'll probably take it now. I think that Tielemans, it's sort of gone off the radar, but I think that's a decent shout. I think that Leicester don't always seem to start Tielemans at the moment, which makes me sort of feel that they are trying to plan for life ahead of him anyway. And I think they'd probably rather get some money for him than not. I mean, they hardly made a transfer in the summer because of funds. So it's not like they're flush with cash. I'm sure they'd rather have some money through selling him. So I think that is one that we could see happen. So it wouldn't surprise me that for us to sign 2 players. I'd be very surprised if we don't sign anyone. Very surprised. I don't know about Nero. What do you think?
No, agreed. I think Tielemans is someone I would go for. I think if we can, I'll try and strike a deal now rather than wait till he goes on a free in the summer, because then you've got everyone sort of going in for him.
Yeah.
I think the one advantage is maybe at the start of the season, I don't know, Leicester were probably afraid of getting relegated, but I think they seem to be sort of mid-table now, sort of pretty safe. So, like I said, it won't be a bad for them from their perspective. It won't be a bad time to make some money out of him now, compared to if they were in a relegation battle. Then they'd rather keep him to the end. So I think there is something there definitely. Like I said before, I'll prioritize that position, because if Partey gets injured, that's pretty much done. So Tielemans is a great backup for him. Like I said, I'll try and go for a winger. I wouldn't really want to pay 78 million for him. I don't think the club would do that anyway. But yeah, if you can bring someone in up front just to cover. There's a guy called he scored the 2 goals in the quarterfinal of the World Cup called Weghorst. He might be available.
Oh man. You still got his poster on your wall?
The same number of goals as Harry Kane,
yeah. Man, it's really hard for me to ever hear his name without thinking about you. And just sorry for the inside joke. I don't know if anyone recalls. If anyone was one of our legacy listeners, they will remember that. Nero was really unhappy that we didn't do a deal last January for a striker, given the situation we're in. Weghorst was one of the names that he said, was it Burnley assigning a player like Weghorst? Like, why can't we just go for him?
Exactly. He took Argentina into extra time and penalties, didn't he? So
he did. Yeah. I do want to on that point though. I think it's actually it gives me a good opportunity to segue on this, because I'm conscious of time, and therefore we should probably wrap up soon. But what I did want to say, right, is if Aaronin was here, he would have already said it, because he said it in the last one. But you see, the three of us, when we've been talking about January transfer plans, we've been, I think, fairly conservative in how I've been talking, in terms of we've been fairly level-headed in thinking that, they've got a plan. We need to stick to this plan. We can't make any rash decisions. Like, we've probably got a budget, and, we need to kind of build, etc., etc. Aaronin's point last time round, which was an interesting one, was basically that we've probably got a better chance of winning the league this season than we may in the next 5 years, regardless of how well we plan and strengthen, because of the other clubs around us that will also be strengthening in the coming years. City, United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, all of them. We don't know, Newcastle, we don't know the rate of funding that they might get in, the rate of, the kind of general rate of spending, the general rate of improvement. We don't know all those things. So by being quite conservative and calculated, what we're basically saying is we back our plan. We back Arteta and Edu's plan that actually will end up winning us a league title or Champions League or whatever in a certain amount of years. Aaronin's point was, screw all that, for a second. We're top of the league now. Screw the plan. try and win the league now. So just throwing that out there, what do you guys think, particularly now with Jesus' injury? Do you think there's anything warranting Aaron's argument there? Nero, I'll go to you because, Mize and I did sort of get to respond to that when he said it last time.
We have to be careful, right? We don't want to do a Leeds. I know we won't do a Leeds, but when Leeds went all out for the Champions League and got relegated, we don't want to end up in their position. I think, it's the first time I'm hearing it. So, I completely get that. Like, this might be our best shot in a while. So, it's a tough one. Like I said, I was sort of alluding to before, I don't want to be panic buying and then us dealing with, years like with Pepe. We potentially panic buyed and it's taken us 4 years to recover from it. I'm happy with what Arteta and Edu's approach has been so far, and it's sort of slow and steady, right? Rather than sort of going gung ho like some other teams. I think if we sort of stick to our principles and this is what we've always done as a club, then I wouldn't really want to change it. It's sort of that's how our DNA is, isn't it? So we won't be Arsenal, would it, if we start splashing out hundreds of millions on players just to go for the league?
Well, I don't think we've got the money. Like you say, I'm not really sure we could do that anyway. But Mize, what about you? What do you think? We sort of answered it in the last episode, but that was before these injuries. This injury singular. Top of the league now. 5 points clear at the top of the league. None of us thought in a million years, none of us thought that was going to happen. And now, our main striker is injured. Are you sympathetic towards the Aaron and route?
I think I am a bit more now. So, as a fan, we've been burned in the past by big contracts, big money for players like Pepe. But as a fan, right, ultimately we support the team because we want them to be successful. We want the club to be successful. We want to see us win trophies and get to finals and finish as high up in the Premier League as we possibly can. So for me, just purely as a fan, I couldn't really care less like how much we spent. Yeah, okay, there's the financial stability of the club, but you just kind of have to assume that the people the people that are supposed to be competent in their jobs to make sure we don't drop down, get relegated or go bust or whatever. Those people are do their jobs and they're competent at that. So from a fan perspective, if it's a case of Murdoch's on the table, Tielemans on the table, X, Y, and Z players are on the table, and we can go and get them, and it means that we challenge for the league, then absolutely, I think we should go for it. I mean, I didn't agree with Aaron, and not so much I didn't agree with Aaron. I didn't see the vision that Aaron had at the start of the season when he sort of said, let's see how we do. And if we do pretty well and we win the first few games, who knows? And we were all just a bit like, nah, that's not happening, mate. We finished fifth last season. We're not jumping, And in hindsight, or not so much in hindsight, but retrospectively, he was right. He was right because other teams haven't kind of stepped up to the plate, and we've set the bar, and we've been the most consistent team, and that's fantastic to see. Whether we can, I'm not necessarily sure. Even in order to maintain the form that we've shown, I don't necessarily think it's as simple as just signing players. So that will obviously help. Right? But you can't go and sign another Gabriel Jesus. So and as you guys just said, right, we don't have 100 million I don't know. I've no idea how much we have to spend in January, but I wouldn't think that we've got, the capacity to go and spend, big on 2 or 3 50 million pound players, basically. So we're going to have to potentially be quite shrewd. Like I said before, maybe a loan deal if it's to kind of fill that striker hole in the squad, depending on how bad the Jesus injury is. But if there's deals that we are planning for and kind of earmarking for the summer, or maybe even next summer, as in 18 months away, can we accelerate some of those deals? Because I'm sure the club, they must be planning, right? They must be planning for future. And if there's some deals that we can maybe accelerate and bring forward, then why not? Why not, right? Because I mean, look, if you're asking me, can I, with Aaron's point previously, there is a chance that we can win the league this season. There is a chance. It might be a very small chance, but there is a chance. And I think we should, if there's anything that we can do to try and maximize that opportunity, we should try and do it. And even if we still fall short, falling short probably means second, third, or fourth. So that's still a bloody good achievement for this team and for Arteta basically. And then we could go from there. I don't necessarily agree with his point that this is the best chance in the next 5 years. Because you just don't know what's going to happen. You just have no idea what's going to happen. Man United could get bought out. Liverpool could get bought out. And who knows what happens with the future of their clubs. So, yeah.
It's an interesting debate.
Would you though risk sort of derailing what plans that we do have in place for the next 5 years? Because obviously, from Arsenal fan perspective, we have been sort of patient this long anyway. So what's the next couple of years?
I personally wouldn't. I personally wouldn't. And although I think Aaron's plan is a very good devil's advocate type, scenario to throw out there, because he would contest Miser's point that Miser just said there before. He would contest Miser's point by saying, yeah, you're right. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but we do know that we're top of the league at the moment, right? Like that's what he would probably say back to that, I imagine. I think if there's something that I think that I would like to see us do, given we are top of the league, given there is opportunity, I would like us to just maybe accelerate things that we already think that we were going to do, if it's possible. So if it is a case where we thought, okay, do you know what? Over the next 2 windows, we're going to get, I don't know, these 4 players or whatever. Let's just say if that was the case. Well, if it's possible to get any number of those 4 players now in January, I would do it. It probably isn't possible of getting them all anyway. But I think that I would try and aggressively do that because one, the numbers will help, and 2, you are going to go get them anyway. And so ultimately it will help the challenge that we're, this unlikely title challenge that we're on. So yeah, look, I don't know what that means. Realistically, I think the talk is that we are planning of, to have a Partey successor over the next kind of summer or so. Maybe the next summer is the summer that we go for another big central midfielder. I'm not saying that type of player will be available in January anyway, but I don't want to kind of just, I guess, go back to the crux of your point. I don't want us to do anything that we wouldn't have done otherwise. So I don't want us to be have a problem that we need to sort out later, right? Someone else on wages that we just need to get rid of. We've just done such an amazing job of getting rid of all that noise. All those players on that kind of longer, expensive contract. We've done such a great job to get that off. So it's maybe we should just keep it as it is and not get too greedy right now. Hey, I hope we don't come to regret it. Listen, guys, any closing comments? I think it's been a brilliant chat. It goes to show that we've missed talking about Arsenal all this time. We're on about 1 hour 12 minutes so far. But are there any closing comments from any of you? Nero, go to you first.
I'm just that, obviously I'm just sort of excited for the season to restart again.
Boxing Day.
Yeah, can't believe it's already here.
Train strikes.
And what's the one after that? Was it Newcastle? Isn't it Tuesday? So
yeah, the next home game after that is Newcastle. We've got Brighton, I think, away before that. But
no, I'm just obviously England World Cup was a good distraction anyway. But yeah, sort of nothing like the league for me and nothing like Arsenal. So can't wait.
Can't wait. Mice.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like looking forward to it's such a weird. It's just still really weird. Like I'm still in World Cup mode. Only 1 game left or 2 games left, but one, the final left. And then we're just straight back into it, and it's over Christmas as well. So it's just like a mental period in it for everyone. But yeah, similar to Nero, very, very much buzzing to see. I'm just very interested to see now, like with this break, do we just carry on where we left off, or are there going to be, obviously Jesus injury is one, but are there going to be some like hiccups or, it's just going to be really interesting to see how not just us, but every team starts that, comes back after Christmas and how their kind of Christmas, New Year form ends up being. So yeah, it's just going to be a really, really interesting kind of second half of the season. And fingers crossed we can do something.
Yeah, I agree. You hope, like one of the things Arteta said on his post-match from the AC Milan game, I thought I really loved the tone that he was talking. He basically kind of said, I think the question was aimed, the crux of the question was basically saying, it's really disruptive, isn't it? This kind of World Cup break in the middle of the season. And I think what he sort of said words effective, because no, do you know what? Like, even in the summer, we get players who come back at different points, and we have to manage their fitness differently, and we have to manage, it's just how it is. It's fine. And I love the fact that he just didn't seem panicked about it, and he's really like, no, this it's fine. I'm in control of the situation. We've got a plan. We've got a plan for everyone, and I'm good. I really love that. And I'm very, very excited for Boxing Day. So, look, boys, thank you so much. Maybe we'll record next week. I know we haven't decided. I know it's like a busy week for everyone because it's just that, the week leading up to Christmas. But we will have played another friendly, as he rightly pointed out, Nero. We will be playing Juventus, I think, this weekend at the Emirates. So, we might have. It might if we can record, then maybe we reflect on these few friendlies that we've been playing against some big clubs over the last couple of weeks during the World Cup, and really predict how we think that we're going to shape up for Boxing Day. But thank you very much, boys. It was really good to see you guys. Shame Aaron couldn't join us. He's in India somewhere, I think, traveling. Or just kind of repenting for his sins in life. Somewhere spiritual, I'm sure. But cool, brilliant.
Nice one.
Good night, boys. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Cheers.
Everyone who joined live. Cheers, Shani, for the comment, and we will see you all soon. Take care.
Cheers, Raj. Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Bye.